Je donne maintenant la parole à Monsieur Atul Khare. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to again provide an update on the progress on the closure of UNAMID following the termination of its mandate on 31 December 2020. I am pleased to report that recently the Secretariat achieved the initial milestone set by this Council to withdraw all uniformed personnel formally deployed to the mission and staff not involved in its liquidation, except for those that have constituted a uniformed guard unit as authorized by this Council by the deadline of 30 June 2021. Madam President, this task involved the repatriation of almost 6,000 troops and police, as well as separation of almost 1,200 staff. It also involved consultation with all relevant stakeholders to ensure that uniformed members who expressed a desire to not return for reasons related to international protection needs were processed by the refugee authorities of the Government of Sudan. I am grateful to the countries concerned in acknowledging that the status of these individuals in seeking asylum is a humanitarian act, not based on political considerations. The drawdown also involved the parallel closure and handover of the former mission headquarters and 13 team sites to local authorities for civilian use in Central, South, and North Darfur states, as well as UNAMID equipment was recovered, environmental remediation was completed, and former mission personnel were withdrawn. All remaining personnel and assets are now consolidated within the El Fasher logistics facility, other than the small components based in Khartoum and Port Sudan to support the transport of assets and interaction with the authorities during the liquidation of UNAMID. To ensure that progress remains on track, earlier this month I concluded my second official visit to Sudan since the conclusion of the mandate on 31 December 2020. Between 6 and 15 July, I met again with His Excellency Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Chairperson of the Sovereign Council, as well as the Deputy Chairperson, Lieutenant General Mohammad Hamdan Dagalo, otherwise known as General Himeti, and the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Ezeldin Sheikh. In addition, I interacted with the newly appointed Governor of Darfur, Mini Minawi, as well as the new Wali of the North Darfur state, Nimir Abdel Rahman. All leaders shared their satisfaction at the successful achievement of the expedited timelines and discussed ways to resolve outstanding issues related to liquidation and wider transition implications. Madam President, I wish to stress that following this visit to Sudan, I also met with the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Monique Sangza-Bagnawa, and the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Bankole Adeye, on 19 July 2021 in Addis Ababa to inter alia report on progress in closing the former hybrid African Union-United Nations mission. Members will be cognizant of my notes to the Council on 25 June and 2 July, highlighting key issues and the completion of UNAMID's drawdown, including the withdrawal of 22 military and police contingents. I can report now that contingent-owned equipment belonging to Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, China, Jordan, Kenya, Senegal, Tanzania, and Togo has either returned to its home country or been deployed to another peacekeeping operation. Further, Madam President, the equipment of Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Gambia is in Port Sudan, awaiting vessels for transport, and equipment belonging to Egypt, Pakistan, and Rwanda, as well as that of a Chinese engineering unit, is en route from Darfur to Port Sudan. A guard unit authorized by the Security Council comprising 360 police from former formed police units from Indonesia, Nepal, and Pakistan remains in Al Fasher to provide internal security to remaining United Nations personnel and assets. I should note that the primary responsibility to provide security for these UN assets and personnel rests with the Government of Sudan, and I am pleased to report that it is prepared to take necessary actions and do so in coordination with the Guard unit. Madam President, since I last briefed the Security Council, the General Assembly has approved funding amounting to $79 million to support the final liquidation of UNAMID no later than 30th June 2022. While morale within the liquidation team remains high, liquidation will still involve a sustained effort across a number of complex tasks. Among the more urgent tasks is the destruction of ammunition. You have some hard copies of photographs before you of the ammunition before and the ammunition after, to which I draw attention, much of which was found to have reached its expiration date and was therefore volatile. After increasing the incineration capacity, this effort is now almost complete. Madam President, the facilities and equipment handed over to local authorities to date outside of Al Fasher had a residual value exceeding $41 million. Nevertheless, as I reported to the Council in my note of 25 June, confirmed and unconfirmed reports suggest varying degrees of destruction and theft at 10 of the 14 sites handed over to local authorities. While the associated assets no longer belonged to the United Nations, these are major losses for the communities involved. I note that although authorities have made commitments to investigate these incidents, various Sudanese interlocutors have nevertheless suggested that these events resulted from underlying tensions among groups locally, along with concerns, whether real or perceived, surrounding equitable access to the facilities and equipment that was handed over. In moving forward with the disposal of the remaining property of UNAMID, I draw your attention to the map of Al Fasher Logistics Base distributed in hard copy in front of you to illustrate the complexity of the task at hand and the future value of such a facility for the people of Darfur. The premises in Al Fasher are not just a base, but have the capacity to form a substantial community in their own right with extensive office infrastructure, more than 1,000 self-contained living units, a significant number of facilities for collective working and learning arrangements, a hospital facility, water storage, purification equipment and distribution lines, a power generation and distribution network, wastewater treatment facilities, a major fuel storage depot, recreational facilities, maintenance and vehicles workshops, incineration facilities, communication towers, and large warehousing capacities, including a refrigerated warehouse used for food supplies. Madam President, in addition to the fixed facilities, a wide variety of movable equipment and inventories have been consolidated at the Al Fasher base, including hundreds of vehicles, generators, furniture, information and communication technology equipment, and supplies for the maintenance of facilities and equipment. As the Council will observe, it is critical that the Government of Sudan makes every effort to ensure that this enormous reserve of facilities and equipment is sustainably applied to national imperatives for civilian use. It is my intention, Madam President, to support the team that remains in UNAMID through disposal of remaining assets across two distinct liquidation phases. 1st July to 30th September 2021, a final 3-month period for withdrawal of retained United Nations assets, sales to other United Nations entities and non-governmental organizations at market value, destruction of equipment subject to end-user restrictions, and commercial sales of equipment that mostly has been scrapped because it is beyond economical repair or use. Then, from 1st October 2021 and beyond, donation and associated distribution of remaining fixed and movable assets to government institutions and related non-governmental organizations in Sudan based on the General Assembly's consideration of a holistic, Sudanese-owned donation plan. The first phase of this process is well underway. Since the UNAMID mandate came to an end, UNAMID equipment currently valued at $8.1 million has been transferred to other operations, including UNITAMS, UNISFA, and UNIFIL. This process will continue. In addition, 2 convoys have departed Al Fasher so far this month with valuable equipment that will be restored as needed and held within the Peacekeeping Reserve at Brindisi for future deployment to other field missions. Nevertheless, the vast bulk of UNAMID assets will remain in Sudan for donation to the Sudanese authorities for civilian use. In pausing to better illustrate the potential benefits to the people of Darfur, just as an example, the mission currently holds 170 tons of sodium hypochlorite salt, which can be used to purify 6.8 billion liters of water, enough to meet the cooking and drinking clean water needs of more than 1 million people for 1 year. Madam President, to this end, during my recent visit to Sudan, I implored all government interlocutors to emphasize the immediate development of a single holistic donation plan with input and agreement from government interlocutors at the national and local levels. The United Nations country team and UNITAMs have committed to support the government in identifying sustainable imperatives that would best benefit local communities. This plan could form the foundation for the Secretary General to present the proposal to the General Assembly as required by the United Nations regulations and rules to guide the donation of equipment and facilities in support of identified national priorities such as the National Plan for Protection of Civilians. Successful completion and approval of such a plan can hasten the full departure of remaining remnants of UNAMID prior to June 2022. Building on the success of the experience of the handover of the substantial Zalinji headquarters site, which was gradually turned over to local authorities for use and occupation by the local university, I further expressed to Sudanese officials our intention to proceed with a phased handover of the Al Fasher site in segments beginning in November. If handover can progress in this fashion, it will equally allow for the phased reduction of the Guard unit, the only United Nations uniformed personnel remaining currently in Darfur. Madam President, for all this to occur in an orderly and speedy fashion, I must raise the issue of armed movements that have stationed forces around the Al Fasher compound since the beginning of June, which I reported on in my note of 25th June. Units from at least 5 different groups, as well as the Sudanese armed forces, have been identified by colleagues based in Al Fasher, and I have provided 2 photographs and hard copies to you to see how these armed groups are located. After an initial period of confusion among these groups, which led to the disruption of UNAMID movements and in some cases harassment of United Nations personnel and vendors, movements have for the most part proceeded as needed in the recent weeks. Nevertheless, coordination and leadership among these units is critical if the remaining liquidation process is to proceed smoothly for the long-term sustainable benefit of Sudan and its people. I therefore intend to continue to monitor the liquidation of UNAMID closely based on my recent discussions with His Excellency the President, the Vice President, and the new Governor and Wali of Darfur and North Darfur, respectively. Madam President, in conclusion, allow me to thank the Government of Sudan for its support thus far in achieving the timely and successful drawdown of UNAMID, and I look forward to continued cooperation to achieve our shared objectives. Thank you, Madam President.
Je remercie le secrétaire général adjoint Atul Khare pour son intervention. Et je vais maintenant donner la parole